Parents said I'd fail. Now I'm richer than them. Story time. My father insisted I attend my golden child brother's wedding, threatening to cut off my tuition if I refused. But they didn't expect what came next, me revealing I actually earned more than my brother. Growing up, I was always the forgotten child. My father openly favored my brother to the point where it wasn't even subtle anymore. I remember once he told me bluntly, I don't care if you got accepted to some prestigious college. You're going to the local one. We don't want your brother feeling jealous. So I played along. I smiled and said, sure, Dad, I'll go to that college. Just one condition. I get to stay in the dorms. But that was all part of the lie. I secretly attended the prestigious college anyway, on a scholarship he never knew about. One day, I knew the truth would come out. And when it did, it would hit them like a bombshell. Now imagine this. The same family who barely acknowledged me for years suddenly demanding I show up, smile, and act like we're close for just one day. Hard situation, right? But that's how it's always been with my family. Let me take you back to the start. My name is Jonas. And if you haven't guessed by now, my family is far from functional. Actually, I hesitate to even call them family. What do you call people who gave birth to you only to toss you aside when they found a shinier, better version of you? Because that's what happened. Here's the blunt truth. I could have had a happy, loving home if my parents had treated both their kids equally. But nope, they decided to worship one child while treating the other like an afterthought. It's not even a subtle bias. It's blatant favoritism. They've sidelined me my entire life simply because of my brother, Roman, was the healthier, better looking kid. Roman was that perfect, picture-worthy baby everyone wanted to hold. Me, I was the scrawny, awkward one people politely ignored. But shouldn't parents rise above that kind of shallow favoritism? Apparently not in my case. For my parents, Patrick and Megan, it didn't take long. By the time Roman was a month old, he was already their golden child, the star of the show. He didn't have to be particularly talented. Just being the more charming one was enough. Everyone naturally gravitated towards him. And I was the background character, always. You can imagine how bleak that made my childhood. My parents barely met my basic needs, too busy dotting on Roman to bother with me. And my brother, he soaked up every ounce of attention, growing into a full-blown egotistical brat. It wasn't just the lack of affection that hurt. It was how Roman used his favorite position. He bullied me constantly. Yes, you heard that right. I got bullied by my younger brother. Whether it was throwing tantrums that ruined my plans or literally snatching away things I liked, he made it his mission to ruin my days. It was miserable enough on his own. Add two completely biased parents into the mix, and you get a childhood that felt more like a nightmare. The truth is, Roman being spoiled wasn't entirely his fault. My parents made him that way. While he got showered with new toys, praise, and constant attention, I was always the afterthought. My birthday's just a formality. Any accomplishment I achieved, barely acknowledged. I was nothing more than background noise. I remember one time in 3rd grade, I actually brought home a report card filled with straight A's. I was thrilled. I thought, finally, maybe I'd get a little recognition. But when I showed my mom, all she said was, that's good, barely glancing up. Meanwhile, she raved about Roman's messy little crayon drawing, declaring it fridge-worthy like it was the Mona Lisa. My perfect grade thrown into the drawer with a junk mail. And that's how it always was. Roman called the shots. Family trips, he picked where we went. Dinner, his choice. TV shows, always what he wanted to watch. Anytime I dared to suggest something, it was immediately dismissed, and Roman loved every second of it. He rubbed in it constantly, like he was king of the house, and I was nothing more than his personal servant. It wasn't hard to figure out why I wanted to get out of that house so fast. Luckily, I had my chance. I worked hard, kept my head down, and ended up landing a scholarship to one of the best universities in the world. Finally, a shot at freedom. But of course, there was a catch. There's always a catch. The school was several states away, and like clockwork, my parents stepped in to crush that dream. They insisted I stay local and attend the college in our home state. Why? Because Roman might feel bad that I got into a prestigious school and he didn't. Their logic, well, it was completely ridiculous to say the least. Roman could have worked as hard as I did, but no, they needed to protect his ego. It was like they knew I had the potential to be more successful, but they couldn't let me outshine him. It wasn't part of their script. But here's the thing, I was done playing along. I told them I'd agree to stay local on one condition, that I'd be allowed to live in the dorms. They thought I was giving in, but I had something else planned entirely. I told my parents I'd agree to their plan, but only if they let me live in the dorms on campus. Naturally, they jumped at it, convinced they successfully convinced me to stay at the local college. But did I actually enroll there? Not a chance. What they didn't know was that I'd already accepted the scholarship offer from the prestigious college out of state. So while they thought I was attending classes nearby, I was actually living my best life in a whole new city, enrolled in one of the top schools in the country. And to make things even better, the finance program I got into took only 2 years to complete, unlike the local college, which would have dragged on for 4. It was perfect. Not only could I graduate faster, but I'd finally escape the suffocating environment my parents had created. Honestly, it was the smartest move I ever made. The new school opened doors I never imagined. Shortly after graduation, I landed a 6-figure job. Been working there a year now, and I'm already up for a promotion. And get this, I managed to pull it all off using the scholarship, which covered most of my tuition. As for the remaining expenses, well, I used the money my father kept sending me under the assumption I was still attending the local college. Yeah, I know, it might seem sneaky, but after years of being overlooked, I consider it payback. For once, I wasn't the one being taken advantage of. Contact with my family stayed minimal. A few obligatory calls, here and there, maybe a holiday visit to keep suspicions low. Beyond that, they didn't check in much. After all, they had their golden child to focus on. And honestly, I was fine with it. Sure, it stung sometimes, realizing they never even noticed I'd left the state. But the freedom, the peace of not having to deal with their toxic favoritism, more than made up for it. Still, deep down, I couldn't help but miss the idea of family. Not the dysfunctional version I had, but the kind where people actually cared whether you were there or not. Which is why I was floored when my dad called me out of the blue this morning. Roman, it turns out, is getting married. And my father wanted me to come home a few days early, no less, to help with preparations. For a second, I was stunned. Had my dad really asked me to come back? After all these years, he even told me outright that he wanted everyone in the family there, that I was a part of the family and needed to be present for Roman's big day. It threw me. I'd waited so long to hear something like that, to feel acknowledged by them. And now, suddenly, here it was. But then reality sank back in. These were the same people who barely noticed me growing up. The same parents who had no idea their elder son had been living in another state for years, building a life without them. Here I was, living states away, staring at my phone, wondering, do I really want to return to the same people who've spent my entire life ignoring me? I felt torn. A part of me longed for that sense of belonging, for family. It would have been nice, just once, to feel like they genuinely cared. But at the same time, the idea of walking back into their world only to be sidelined again terrified me. Was I setting myself up for disappointment all over again? So, I'm curious, what would you have done in my situation? Comment down below. Would you go back and attend your brother's wedding just for the sake of family? Or would you stay firm and keep your distance, protecting yourself from another letdown? Well, after 2 days of thinking over it, I finally made my choice. I know not everyone will agree with me, but I decided to protect my peace. I declined my father's invitation to Roman's wedding, and honestly, it might be the best decision I've ever made. Spoiler alert, my parents haven't changed. And deep down, I knew they never would. So I kept it simple. I shot my dad a text, just a short message saying I wouldn't be able to make it. No long-winded explanation, no excuses. And I braced myself for their response. I knew something was coming, but I didn't expect the manipulation to kick in so fast. Within an hour, my phone blew up. First, my mom tried the guilt trip route. She asked if I really wanted to be that brother, if I truly wanted to miss Roman's special day. She even tossed in how hurt Roman would be and how much it would mean to him if his older brother showed up. And of course, she pulled out the classic "you only have one family" card. But here's the thing, Roman's big day meant absolutely nothing to me because Roman had never once cared about any of my milestones, not a single one. And sure, you do only get one family, but that only matters if they actually treat you like family. So I told my mom exactly what I told my dad. I wasn't coming. And when guilt tripping didn't work, my father tried his usual tactics. At first, he kept it light, tossing out lines about how family should stick together during moments like this. But when I still wouldn't budge, he went straight for the low blow. He called and flat out threatened to stop paying my college tuition if I didn't show up for Roman's wedding. Said they couldn't afford for people to gossip about one of their sons skipping such a significant event. It was the same old story, everything about appearances. Not about me, not about Roman, just about how they looked in front of neighbors and friends. And that's when I snapped. Who does that? Who threatens to pull financial support just to force someone to pose for family photos? It was selfish, plain and simple. But here's the kicker. What they didn't know was that I didn't need their money. Not anymore. So I told my dad point blank, go ahead, stop paying. I'm not coming. And nothing you say will change that. What he didn't know, I graduated over a year ago. I had a 6-figure job. I was living states away, and not one dime of theirs was funding my life. I built a life far beyond anything they could ever have provided for me. I didn't want them knowing how well things were going or where I was, because I knew the moment they found out, they'd try to drag me back into their chaos. Sure, I knew I'd have to tell them the truth eventually, but right now, I was enjoying letting them stew. Naturally, my refusal to attend Roman's wedding, despite all of my father's warnings, set him off. He went off on how ungrateful I was, how I'd always been difficult, and how he planned to teach me a lesson by pulling me out of the local college. He said it like it was some devastating threat, completely unaware that I'd never even enrolled in that school to begin with. Honestly, I couldn't stop laughing. I easily could have told him right then and there, but where's the fun in that? So now, I'm just sitting back, waiting for him to go down to the college and try to withdraw me from a place I never even attended. The moment he realizes I don't need him, his approval or his money is going to hit like a brick wall. And when it does, I guarantee my phone will be blowing up with another tirade. Frankly, I'm looking forward to it. Hey guys, Jonas here again. I know it's only been a day since my last update, but the family drama just took an even wilder turn. I had a gut feeling my dad wasn't going to take my refusal lightly. And surprise, I was right. It all blew up with a phone call from him this morning. He was absolutely furious. The moment I picked up, he launched into an angry tirade, demanding to know where I'd been and what I'd done with the money he's been sending for my tuition. Honestly, it felt like watching a grown man have a full-blown toddler tantrum because he couldn't control the situation anymore. Turns out, after our last conversation, he actually marched down to the local college himself, intent on withdrawing me to teach me a lesson. But here's where it really gets good. The college had no record of me. None. Zero. I can only imagine the look on his face when he realized I'd never even been enrolled. It must have hit him like a punch to the gut. And believe me, the bitterness in his voice during that call made it clear just how humiliated he was. Of course, he still wanted answers, demanding to know what I'd been doing for the past year and what I'd quote-unquote spent his money on. But honestly, the situation was so ridiculous, I could barely stop laughing. Eventually, I decided to stop playing around and lay it all out for him. I told him point blank, I graduated a year ago on scholarship, and the money you'd sent sent me? Yeah, I used it to cover basic expenses while I wrapped up my degree. And then I dropped the real bomb. I've been working a 6-figure job ever since, with a career and life that's completely mine. I told him outright I was earning more than Roman now. At first, he thought I was joking, but when it sank in that I wasn't, I could hear the disappointment in his voice. The realization that I wasn't the struggling kid he had pegged me as, someone independent and thriving, must have been a tough pill to swallow. I braced myself for whatever was coming next. As soon as the reality hit him, my father exploded. He accused me of being deceitful, called it betrayal that I had kept all of this hidden. He started going on and on about how much he'd done for me and how I'd thrown it all back in his face. Really? Was he talking about the years he and my mom ignored me in favor of Roman? Then came his most ridiculous demand yet. He said the only way he'd ever forgive me is if I showed up at Roman's wedding and saved the family from any embarrassment or gossip. Unbelievable. Even after everything, all he cared about was appearances. I couldn't believe he was still so obsessed with how things looked to others. None of that mattered to me anymore. I told him straight, I didn't need his forgiveness, and I wasn't going to play along in their fake happy family act. He kept pushing, sounding more frantic, practically begging me to show up, but I wasn't budging. I told him flat out, there was no way I'd stand at the wedding of the person who made my childhood miserable. And more importantly, I was done. Done with the guilt trips, done with the games, done with the entire family circus. For once, I didn't hold back. I told him I didn't want any contact from any of them ever again. They could go ahead and celebrate their golden child's big day without me. I'd be too busy enjoying my life. He tried one last emotional plea, reminding me I was his son and family sticks together, but I'd had enough. And I told him he clearly only had one son, the one they'd cared about all along, and they were welcome to keep it that way. I ended the call, blocked his number, and didn't give him a chance to say anything else. And that's where things stand. I've officially cut ties with my toxic family. It's bittersweet. Part of me never imagined it coming to this, but honestly, I feel free, finally at peace. And who knows, maybe now, without all their drama hanging over me, I can build the kind of family I've always wanted. Fast forward a month. I thought cutting them off would be the end of it, that I'd finally stepped away from all the manipulation and chaos, but clearly they couldn't leave well enough alone. A few days ago, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I picked up. It was my mom. She was crying, sobbing uncontrollably. I was surprised. After all, I'd blocked their calls, but I stayed on the line, thinking something terrible might have happened. Turns out, nothing serious. She just wanted to tell me how much she missed me, how she wanted her son back, how none of that drama mattered to her anymore. It sounded almost desperate, like she was trying to rewrite everything. But where was this energy before? When I told them I was done, they didn't seem to care. Now suddenly, she's acting like she wants to fix things. It felt suspicious. So I politely told her I'd call her back later, but hung up right after. Something wasn't sitting right. I reached out to my aunt and mom's sister to see if she had any idea what might really be going on. What my aunt told me next confirmed everything I suspected. Roman's wedding wasn't just a disaster. It was an outright catastrophe. Turns out, his seemingly perfect fiance, yeah, she was a full-blown con artist. Right before the big day, she somehow convinced Roman, my parents, and even a few other family members to invest all of their savings into a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. You can guess where this is going. It was a total scam. She took the money and vanished. No wedding, no investment, just gone. And along with her, all of my family's savings. But that wasn't even the worst of it. My aunt also revealed that my parents' situation was far worse than I imagined. Apparently, my dad had stirred up trouble with an employee's family, causing a major financial hit to his already struggling company. Suddenly, everything made sense. That's why he'd been so desperate for me to attend Roman's wedding. It wasn't about family. It was about appearances. He wanted to parade me around as part of his picture-perfect family to salvage whatever reputation he had left. But that plan clearly fell apart, and Roman's whole fiancé disaster only piled onto their bad luck. They were bleeding money from every direction. To make matters worse, they had even used their house as collateral for a loan to save the business, and yet that backfired too. Now, they were on the verge of losing their home, forced to move into some run-down apartment or trailer because it was all they could afford. Everything became crystal clear. My mom's call had nothing to do with missing me. They saw I was doing well, and suddenly I became their last-ditch safety net. I could see the game they were playing. For years, they never cared. Too busy prioritizing Roman, and now they expected me to bail them out. But here's the ironic twist. My parents are now at war with Roman. They're blaming him for the whole wedding scam, all the money lost, all their bad luck. It's actually kind of poetic. The golden boy they built their world around, he's the one who burned it to the ground. And honestly, watching them face the consequences of their favoritism felt satisfying, and I wanted no part in it. After my mom called, I blocked her number again. But did that stop them? Of course not. They were desperate. Eventually, they even showed up at my house. Don't ask me how they found my address. I suspect they pestered old friends for it, but that didn't matter. What mattered is that they stood at my door, trying to guilt me into family values, claiming it was my duty as their eldest son to help them now. I didn't entertain it. I shut the door right in their faces. They begged, said they spent their last money just to fly out and see me. Tough luck, but it didn't stop there. A few days later, Roman showed up, practically in tears, begging for help, claimed he missed having his big brother around. What big brother? The one he bullied all through childhood? I warned him once, but he kept going on about how dad and mom were about to cut him off, blaming him for everything. He was clearly desperate, but I told him flat out, if he or anyone else came back, I'd call the police. Since then, silence, and I genuinely don't care. I finally cut ties with that toxic mess. Sure, there's a little sadness, but there's always going to be be a gap where family should have been, but I'm not carrying their baggage anymore, just for the sake of blood ties. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe to Reddit Family Karma. Thank you.